Hello YouTube, it's Nishi here. Hope you have a really good day. So today's video, what we're going to talk about is how payment terms affect a small business and how to reduce or avoid giving them to your customers. So before I get into this though, I just want to remind you, if you find these videos useful, just remember to like, share, follow and subscribe depending on whatever platform you're watching on. And keep an eye out for the other videos we're going to release, because we've got one coming out every single week. And if you go to our LinkedIn or Facebook account, then we've got a video going out pretty much every day. What I'm just talking about now though is payment terms and how they really impact businesses. So in today's video, what we're really going to cover is what are they, why they exist, and also how they really damage small businesses. We're also then going to look at a couple of strategies or a few strategies to actually avoid giving payment terms to your customers. And then worst case scenario, you can't avoid giving payment terms to your customers. We're going to talk about some strategies to actually mitigate the risk that those payment terms put on your business. So let's get straight into it. So what are payment terms? Well, payment terms are essentially when you let your customer use you as a bank or a borrowing facility. You might do a bit of work for them, you might supply them with some goods or equipment, and instead of them paying you, like in a supermarket, you buy something, you pay for it as before you walk out. With payment terms, what you're letting people do is walk out of the supermarket or your shop or virtual store and then pay you later on. The reason payment terms exist is usually, based on my experience, because of industry norms. And what I mean by that is quite often when you've got an industry where there's lots of suppliers and businesses trying to get the same customers, and there isn't a massive difference between those businesses, they're what we call a Me Too business or a commoditized business, then essentially what happens is if the business has gone down as far as it can on price and it's already hit rock bottom, then the next stage is then to offer payment terms, and it works on the basis that essentially one in the hand is worth two in the bush, or essentially the time value of money. A pound today is worth a lot more than a pound in a year's time. And it's in a way, by devaluing a transaction, by allowing payment terms, it's another way of extending a discount or giving a discount. So that's what payment terms are and why they exist. But let's talk about why they're so damaging and toxic to a business. Well, there's a few things really, but the first one is how it just puts the pressure on the business's cash flow. Later on in this video, we are going to talk about strategies to reduce that pressure, but ultimately, if you're selling someone something and they're paying for it later, then the chance that, well, you're not getting your money until much later, and you've probably got overheads to cover until you get paid, you've probably got staff that you've got to pay. It might be that when you build whatever you're building, or to provide the service you're providing, you've got like direct costs. Maybe you've got to buy materials, maybe you've got to get external contractors in who you've got to pay up front so you can deliver that product or service. And then, so you've got to have all this money going out in your small business before money comes in, and that's a really dangerous place to be for a small business, because it means there's less cash, which means it can't invest in growth. And also, it's a massive risk, and the reason it's a massive risk is, let's say you paid out all this money and you owe money to all these people. Maybe some of your suppliers you also have payment terms with. That could be a thing, or is often a thing. But let's say you don't, and you paid out all this money to get a job done or to deliver a good or service, and then that customer who's meant to pay you in like 3 months' time, they go bust, or they disappear, or they decide not to pay you, or they contest the payment. Then you're expecting money to come in to cover costs you've already paid out, and that doesn't come in. This is one of the biggest reasons businesses actually fail. They're relying on someone to pay them, maybe because they've already paid out and invested a lot in delivering that service, and then that payment doesn't come through, and because of that, the cash flows don't work anymore and they have to close down. Maybe the related reason to that is also the fact that because the cash flow doesn't come in until much later, they don't have the money to invest in the growth and the improvement of their business, and then they get overtaken by competitors and other people in their industry, or their products and service becomes obsolete because they couldn't invest in its development, and then their business closes as well. So in my opinion, payment terms are one of the biggest killers of small business out there, and they really do need to be discussed. So what I'm going to talk about now is 3 strategies that we can really use to reduce payment terms in a business and reduce that risk I was just talking about. These are going to seem like really oversimplified, but sometimes the most valuable things in your business are simplified. So, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say these things and then put them into context, right? So firstly, let's say we don't offer payment terms, right? That is a good strategy. Don't offer payment terms. Secondly, try and reduce the payment terms as much as possible. Instead of offering 3 months, see if you can get away with offering 2 weeks. And then thirdly, offer an early repayment discount. So let's say you say to your customer, okay, we're going to give you 3-month payment terms, but actually if you can pay us in 2 weeks, or if you can pay us on delivery, we're actually going to knock 3% off that price, for example. Just something you've worked out which makes your margins work. So those are 3 things. It does sound like a really simplification of something very complex, but the reason I'm going to put it into context, and that context is essentially to negotiate anything in business, you need some kind of leverage, right? If there is nothing to differentiate your business compared to another supplier that your customer might use, then it's difficult to go back to that customer and say, hey, you know what, I know they're offering you 3-month payment terms, but I'm only going to offer you 2. If you can't explain to that customer, well, if the only difference is your payment terms, why should they pay more to you? Then you're going to lose that customer. It's that simple. So payment terms are all about pricing and leverage. So ultimately, to get rid of payment terms or reduce them or get some sort of early settlement discount, well, early settlement discount, that is some form of leverage actually, because you're giving them something in return. But there are many other things you can actually give them. If you are better than one of your competitors, you really need to start talking about it to that customer. If you've got better service level agreements, if you're doing things better, that's when you've really got to bring that into the conversation. Because if they're going to, in their eyes, maybe the price will be the same, but because they're paying you earlier, they're actually paying you more from their perspective. So what that means is you've got to give them something back, because it's a negotiation. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about, while these 3 things might be really simple, it's not as simple, because you've got to think about what you're going to give in return. So that's the thing you can do to avoid or reduce them. But actually, if you're the kind of business where you just don't have any leverage, or it might be in a situation where your customer is so much larger than you are, and they are really calling all the shots, I'll do another video about why that's so dangerous as well. You don't want really large customers, especially in proportion to your size and turnover. But it might be that that customer is so large and they make up such a large part of your turnover that they're utilizing that relationship and they're leveraging you to get those payment terms. You might not be able to actually offer a reduction on the payment terms, but there are things you can do to minimize that risk. So sometimes, if you've heard of invoice financing is essentially where you go to a third-party financing company and they'll say, okay, look, the money that this customer owes to you is actually an asset. We're going to buy that asset off you, and then we're going to pay you some of it up front, and then we're going to pay you the rest when your customer pays us. So what you're doing is you're transferring that debt essentially, and that new invoicing finance company will pay you like 80% up front, and then they'll pay you another 16% when your customer pays them, and then they'll keep that 4% for themselves as part of their fee, and then they'll probably charge you other fees on top. I really don't like invoice financing because it's an incredibly expensive way to run a business, and financing charges in invoice financing tend to be much higher than if you just went and got a loan. So actually that's the second point. If you really have to give some payment terms and you're going to end up with all these cash flow issues in your business, go and get a loan, and I mean a long-term loan. Don't rely on credit cards. If you know payment terms are part of your business model and they're there to stay and there's nothing you can do about them, get a loan so you can actually plug the gaps and self-fund the actual development, and make sure your business is cash rich and you're not so heavily reliant on that customer paying you early. And also, if you're going to get down that route and get a loan, get enough of a loan where you'll have enough money in the bank to cover emergencies in case that customer doesn't pay you. And really, one of the things you can do, if you do go down the invoice financing route, you can actually get insurance. And I believe even if you don't go down the invoice financing route, you can still get insurance on your debtors. And it is expensive, but it's probably still cheaper than invoice financing, or, well, more importantly, it's cheaper than losing all that money. But the idea is, depending on the credit rating of your customer, if you get them checked out properly, you can actually get the insurance on that customer, and if that customer goes bust or they don't pay you for whatever reason, that insurance will cover a certain part of that invoice, and that means your business doesn't necessarily have to fail because you had that big cash flow issue. Those are the main things. I guess in this video what we've done now is we've talked about payment terms, we talked about why they exist, we talked about why they're damaging to a business, we talked about 3 really simple but complex strategies which are based on your business's leverage and ability to leverage to actually reduce those payment terms. And then we've talked about what you can do if you can't actually reduce those payment terms and how to reduce the risk in your business in other ways. So what I want to do is just thank you for watching this video. If you found it really useful, it'd be just, once again, if you can just subscribe to our channel and like the video. But also, if you want to actually talk to me about how a lot of this stuff applies to your own business, then it would be really good if you just went to our website, naccounting.co.uk, and you can book yourself in for a free strategy session with myself where we'll actually talk about how all of these concepts and all the concepts in my other videos actually impact your business, how you can change things in your business to be more profitable and increase the value of your business, and how you can just grow and scale. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you at the next video.